Okay, I want to talk about something, guys. Look, you remember this old thing? This old gal? So if you're not familiar with what this guitar is, this is my 1979 Les Paul KM. Now, I've done roughly 1 million videos about this guitar. It's been in a bunch of my videos, and I love this guitar. This is one of my top 3 guitars that I own. This is one that I, hopefully will never have to get rid of. But something kind of crazy's happened. So my buddy Austin, or Trogley here on YouTube, texted me the other day because we both love Les Paul KMs. Now, like I said, if you have not learned about the history of the KM, I'll kind of throw in some facts on here, but they're really fascinating guitars from the 70s. They did go into the 80s a little bit, but the 79s are kind of the more sought after ones. Whew, words, they're hard. And before we get too far into the video, if you guys would hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. It still tells me like 70-80% of you guys watching the videos are not subscribed. So if you would, it helps the channel out a bunch. You can come hang out with me and let's get nerdy on guitars. So Austin texted me yesterday and was like, dude, check out this KM that's on Reverb. And I was looking at it, and it's missing all kinds of stuff. Like, it's not original in the slightest. It's pretty much an original body and neck. I hope it's the original neck. And a lot of the other stuff had been replaced. And I was like, wow. And I look at it, and I'm like, oh my God, this thing, it's like $4,000. So these guitars have pretty much tripled in price, at least from the time that I bought mine. So I bought this one probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm not sure. We actually vlogged it. We got it from a Guitar Center over in Indiana. And if you want to check that out, I will link that down below. It's, awkward camera voice, all the things you love about early YouTube videos, but we still documented it. And I actually got this one for $2,400, which at the time, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, an insane amount of money for a guitar, but we were kind of rolling the dice. And I still think that is an insane amount of money for a guitar. What's even more insane is the prices of these things on Reverb now. So if you don't know much about the KMs, they are definitely an outlier of the 70s. And what I mean by that is a lot of 70s Les Pauls, the issues are the things that people don't like about them. Pancake bodies. Now this is not a pancake body. This is a single piece of mahogany, not very common in the 70s. The tops on a lot of 70s Les Pauls, you would have 3, 4, 5-piece tops. They didn't care. They're like, if it can fit on a guitar, we're making a top for it. This is a 1-piece top. So like I said, these are, you can't judge us on all Les Pauls from the 70s, but it's still fascinating how much the prices went up. So like I said, keep in mind, I paid $2,400 for this thing. So let's look at these for a second. So the first one on here is a plain top. There were pretty much 3 KMs that you could get. You could get a plain top, which is like this one right here. You could get, of course, a tobacco burst, which I think that the 70s have some of the best tobacco bursts. That was the the finish of the 70s where they're just like nailing it. And then you have what a lot of people refer to as the clown burst, which I did not care for the sunbursts of the 70s. I definitely like the plain, but my favorite is the tobacco burst of the 70s. They really, really did such a good job just on the coloring on these. They look fantastic. But look at the prices of these things. Now, keep in mind there's only, what is this? 11 of these on Reverb. So the first one here, which is a plain top, $6,800. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Because, I mean, who's to say what they're worth? But to me, I'm just like, I like the guitar, but maybe not that much. I don't know. Who knows? Now, next to it is, of course, a tobacco burst, which is just like this one. Now, mine is all original other than the volume pots, which I did replace, but I still have the original ones too that someone could fix if they wanted to. $7,500. Look at this thing. Now this thing is nice and clean. The big thing that you want to watch with these is, if you want one from like a collector standpoint, it's got to have the original double cream T-top pickups in there. That is essential to these guitars. Now look, you got the big dog here, which is $8,500. Now I do want to point out one that's $8,500, but there's a reason why. So if you look at ones like this, you see this, the cherry burst. There's also a really nice tobacco burst down here, and you see this plaque that's on it. Those are the rarest of the rare when it comes to KMs. You want that custom-made plaque on there. I don't like the way it looks, but from a collector standpoint, those are the ones that you want to get. just because that's like the very first run of these. The very, very beginning of these, you're gonna have these custom plaques on here. And Austin, I think he's had one of each. I think that plain top he got was one. Don't quote me on that, Austin, if you're watching this, buddy. Have you had a custom plaque of all three? So what's the point of all this? What's the point of me yapping about these 70s Les Pauls? What I think is fascinating is how much they have jumped up in price in a relatively short amount of time. So why have they been going up so rapidly? Is obviously there's lots of reasons why, but I have a few things that I want to talk about, and I'd be curious to see what you guys think about this as well. So the desire for vintage guitars is obviously still there. Until more recently, 70s guitars were very obtainable. You could get, all kinds of different 70s guitars at a relatively affordable price. If I'm looking at these prices, I'm like, oh my God, like they've went up so much in the past 5-6 years. And what I think has happened was, and we'll stick to Les Pauls in general, would always get compared to the golden era, the 59s, all those amazing Gibsons that came out in the 50s and 60s would get kind of compared to the 70s, and the 70s were always frowned upon. But what's happened now is the 70s are far enough away to where I feel like the 70s guitars now are getting compared to the more modern guitars. They're like, oh, I could get a 70s Les Paul instead of this, modern Les Paul, whatever it is. Granted, obviously the prices are going way up, but I think that it's just everything has turned in the favor of the 70s. People are really, really liking the vibe of the 70s. They have their own thing, They're wonky, they're funky, they're heavy, all these different things, and people are like, that's the vibe. That's what I want. Now, I want to throw one more thing out here at you, but I got to get a different guitar to talk about it because I'm curious what you think about this. Ooh, what do we have here? What is this? Well, this is a mutt. This is a bunch of 80s guitars put together to make one guitar. But here's my question. So we're seeing this with the 70s guitars. They are obviously going way up in price. Do you think that that's going to happen to the 80s guitars? So these 80s guitars are still low, and I'm just curious, how long is it going to be until these things start really jumping up? Because they have went up significantly, but they're still in that like more obtainable range. If you are interested in like a Les Paul KM and you can find one at a good price, if you're interested in a lot of these old 80s guitars, I would get them now. The trajectory of this stuff is just going up. What do you guys think? You think the 80s, you think these shredder guitars are ever gonna kind of go through this renaissance period and just jump up in price? So other than that, that's the video for today. Like I said, I just found it kind of fascinating. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on it. And see you next time. End it bluesy, out of tune, unplugged, 80s style, because that's the way we do it. Bye guys.